So let's talk about importing and cleaning things up for use. I'm going to start with the Win100 Ryuko model because it's personally fantastic to me, and it has almost everything I want to go over when it comes to importing and cleaning things up. So first, we're going to open CAT's import model. Yeah, you know this part. Okay, first thing to notice is that some textures are purple. Some of these problems are usually fixed by selecting the miscellaneous and turning these off, toon texture and sphere texture, because those aren't really compatible with Blender, or at least I haven't found a way yet to use them properly. So now let's look into these purple textures real quick. Select on the mesh first, and then this will pop up. Oh, it's in Japanese. Well, I don't know Japanese that well. I am practicing. But let's go to model options, and let's just translate all of that. So not only is the Japanese here translated for all this, but the shape keys are, and the bones are translated. And it's still all working as they were before. Awesome. Scrolling through this, it seems that the problems are anger mark, light, and I personally know a red surface is this right here. Most purple textures are like missing files, or like the Japanese wasn't read right or something like that. So in order to fix it, I usually go to the nodes. Let's change this dope sheet into the shader editor. You'd think that'd be an overall thing, but no, it's a character thing. I don't understand it. So I usually go into the file system and I try to figure out what it was that is missing. So red surface, based on the way this is looking in this, let's just try importing this. Oh, well, son of a bitch, I was right. Didn't even apply it yet, but whatever. Let's just put the alpha in there. And so now everything's going to that. I don't actually know how any of this works when it comes to these nodes. I'm just replacing a broken area and then just reconnecting all the different lines. So now that that's done, let's check out the other one, like the eyes. That's light, I believe. Now, I did have to guess a little bit before setting up this tutorial, but I did figure out it was this one. And now the last one, which is anger mark, which is supposed to be around here somewhere, based on when I was looking for it. Although I believe a shape key brings it out. Bingo. Ah, there it is. Anger mark, where is that? This, I don't know what this is, but it looks like some kind of mark, so I used it. And that happened to be right. Alright, that wasn't so bad. I mean, previously, I'd actually just keep this area invisible because I had no idea what texture it was. Speaking of invisibility, when I go into look dev mode, we can see that this actually has a transparency to it. I know the original intent was so that you could see past and see the eyes and everything, but Unreal Engine uses transparency a bit differently. And so we're going to be using UE4's version of it rather than Blender's. So that is Red Room. Yes, it is. And its alpha is right here. So you can control the alpha of different materials. What is with the dots? If it wasn't dots, I probably would keep it as usual, but now you know to control transparency right here. And in terms of these tabs, preview is pretty alright. Surface, I only honestly pay attention to use nodes. Turning that off and on to test whether these are working or not. And then under MMD, and then the transparency under MMD material, and then MMD texture. In which, if you're still having some problems with purple and the texture is there, then this use shared toon texture thing can be getting in your way. I don't really pay attention to these other tabs. I kind of just know this process for materials for now. So let's continue on to rig cleanup. First of all, what a mess. I personally don't like the octagonal bone style, so I go into this skeleton context menu that just popped up in the options here because we clicked the armature, and then I head to viewport display. And you got a bunch of different options here, like you got names, that takes up a lot of the view, axes, that also takes up a lot of, oh, that could be useful for rotating bones. Anyways, what we got here? Group colors, sweet. Shapes, that's for the wires that are in like Maya, in which you have custom drivers and stuff. I don't know how to do driver stuff right now. In front, which is X-ray. And then octahedral, which I don't really like. I personally love the stick one. It's a bit more minimalistic. There's B-bone, I don't understand that one at all. Envelope, I really don't understand that one at all. And then there's wire, which is a more minimal version of stick, but without the useful little tips to it. Now let's start cleaning up this model. Wow, that's a lot of useless tip bones. So just having this in the way when you're trying to animate is bothersome. So when it comes to getting these out of the way, you have a few options. You can highlight these things. Oh god, it's a square. Let me change this to the lasso, because I personally love the lasso, and I love it being set to add, which is set new selection. It does a new selection every time. Add, adds on top of it, and then you can click off to reset it. I don't really use these other ones, so I don't care to announce them. What I usually prefer to do is press M to move the bones into a different layer. These boxes signify the same boxes that are right here. No idea what protective layers is for. So let's move this into layer 2, and you can see that it's filled up to showcase that they're here. There's another option in which you can hide things, like vertices and bones and stuff. Like for example, let me hide this. The problem with using hide to try and clean up your setup is that when you switch the modes, the bones can usually come back, and then you could go and try and hide it again. And that's just It's better used when you're trying to make shape keys and select different parts of the body and hide other parts. Anyways, use Alt-H to unhide. Oh god, there they all are. And this is why we need to clean it up. I like having a physics layer, maybe a trash layer, and then a general bone animation layer. Oh, sometimes there's multiple roots. I didn't see this when I was first starting it. And Unreal Engine does not like multiple roots. We have a parent node, then a center tip. Just get rid of the center and center tip. As long as you have this parent node, which Unreal Engine likes to call root, everything else is fine. Another good practice for this part is to go in the pose mode and rotate different bones first to see if they're useful or not. There we go. We've got a nice basic structure. We've got the legs, and we've got, the feet, IK, and everything. Speaking of IK, that's the next thing we're going to set up. I personally love using IK. I mean, look at this. This not moving while the rest of the body with this hip groove bone does move. That's incredibly useful. What if you wanted to grab onto a railing and the character was, hanging onto something? You don't want to use FK, which is this right now. FK is where you have to move the arms individually. But then the problem with that comes in when you have to move the chest. That thing's flailing all over the place. So I like to set up my own IK. We're heading back into edit mode. Let's start with clicking the hand's wrist. But the axis is in local mode. Not to worry, there's tons of axis types right here where local shows up. We've got global, which is always based on where this grid is, rather than the local rotation. Local rather works better in pose mode. Normal is actually what's showing the edit mode bones directions and stuff. I don't know what I'm talking about, I just know we need this y-axis. These other ones, I don't even use them. So now I'm going to use Shift-D on my keyboard to duplicate it. I don't want it to go anywhere, so I'll press right-click, and the bone will be back here exactly in the same spot. And we can use the Y-axis to drag it out. Or we can grab it and press Y to lock it on the axis. X, Y, and Z work just like that. And you can use G to grab. I don't use it that often. I like to use the arrows. Now we need to name this bone something easy to remember and fast. I usually go like LH tip, left hand tip. This right here is actually naming the armature. It doesn't change the name down here, I don't know why, but changing this does change the bone name down in the outliner. This bone will be used for the left hand's wrist to follow its position and rotation. Necessary for when the character is crawling on the ground, but you don't want the hand to rotate at all. That's it for this for now. Let's go back to the wrist and duplicate it again. And go backwards this time. This time, aiming for the two tips to be as close as possible. And I'm going to name it LHIK. For left hand inverse kinematics, it's really easy to search up. Now the weird thing about this is that you have to switch directions of the bone. So you can go to armature and switch direction, or bring up that sweet dynamics context menu and switch direction here. Why this? Because parenting uses one of the tips of the bones rather than like the center of the bone. It uses either the head or tail. And turning it around just kind of works. I don't know why, it's just consistent for me. Now we have to do a few changes to the bones. Switching directions of a bone cuts off connections to it, but I'm still going to unparent it from everything just in case. I use Alt and P to disconnect and unparent it from everything. Then I shift select the root and press Control P to parent and yet keep offset from the wrist bone, because if we do connect, then it's going to teleport all the way over there. We don't want that. So Control and P to keep offset. Now the left hand tip is I'm going to shift to select and apply it to the left hand IK for parenting. And it's going to be like a chain from the tip to the IK to the root. I parent the wrist IK to the root so that it would at least follow where the character is initially placed. Then the tip offset follows the position and rotation of the wrist IK. Now to put it all together so that it makes sense, we need to be in pose mode for this part. So he goes to the wrist, and then goes to the bone constraint properties that just popped up underneath this single bone thingy. Here, we can adjust how bones behave and stuff. Even parent bones using child of, I use this pretty often, to other bones for carrying objects or grabbing onto things, or if you want eyes to like track to like an object or a bone, this is pretty cool and it follows things perfectly. But for now we're going to use inverse kinematics. First we target the object or armature we're picking from with either the sample tool or writing it in. So let's try this, see armature there. Then we write in the bone, which would be LH tip. See, I only need to put LHT and that already showed up. But it's pulling the entire character. This is where the chain comes in. Because it's set to 0, it's grabbing all the bones attached to the object. But if we set it to 1, then it's only going to grab that one bone along the chain. If we increase the chain, then it's going to keep following it up the arm. And all those bones are going to follow, like a chain, of where that IK goes. But we want the wrist to actually follow the way the left-hand tip is pointing. That way, it's a little bit more consistent as we move the character around. We're half set up now, so let's get the arm IK down so that you can see the full power of this. Now the arms. We need the elbow bone, but never the twist bones. We want the main structure up the arm. The twist bones just kind of muck up the way you want to go up the arm. And I'm about to show you how that muck up and the way it does it. So let's do the same process as before with inverse kinematics, attach the model, and then LHIK this time. And then one chain, which should, of course, have now the elbow area following the position of the IK. That's alright. But then if we do this, you can see how the elbow kind of doesn't bend too naturally. She's got two elbows here, an elbow there and an elbow here. And the reason why this is happening is all because the chain is going through this arm twist bone. So this might seem a bit destructive at this time. But what I usually do for this process is go into edit mode, hide the upper arm that's in the way, find that arm twist bastard and delete it. Then unhide it. So now, with the chain length, it should be following things with a correct one elbow. I've been moving the waist because I wanted to show this a little bit later, but when I grab the IK, it's not moving anywhere. That's because the wrist has a lock on it, and because we duplicated from the wrist, the locks are still here. And so if you go back to the single bone and then go to transform and take off these locks, then it shall work much more normally. So now, your hand is steady like a rock. Of course, when it's in range. And this is perfect for crawling, for grabbing objects, and then hoisting himself like rock climbing. Rock climbing is a perfect example of why this is useful. Now, I usually go up to just before the shoulder, because going a little bit further... Why isn't that going? Because going a little bit further into the shoulder kind of makes this unnatural shoulder movement. No, because going a little bit further into the shoulder, you lose control of the shoulder by doing this. And I like to have a bit more control than just it's flailing around based on how the arm is going. But it is another good option on the way of using this. Yeah. Do I know what iterations is for? I don't know. Quality of how much it follows the thingy. I don't know. I just leave it at 500. Now to do all this on the other side, I'm going to speedrun this for you so it doesn't seem as daunting as what I just did. Let's clean this area up first. I'll admit, this is my second speedrun that I did. This is the RH tip. This is why it's my second speedrun. Wanted to clearly show this stuff. I remember constantly looking for the perfect rig for everything, or an auto rig that works all the time. But really, the only perfect rig is the one you're comfortable with. There's tons of rigs out there, and it's different for everyone. So my recommendation is to find the awesome things they do, and then add it to your own rigs. I don't know how to mess with drivers and shortcuts to add back to my rigs yet, but once I do, there's some pretty powerful stuff, like making shapes and wires for special motions for like different rotations of fingers or grabbing all fingers at once. I'm too lazy for such a setup though, but I do have tricks up my sleeve when I get to the animating part. Always forget. Always forget it last. It is. So once you get used to the process, it does not take that long. For now, this is the bare minimum I do to set up for general animation of a model.